Welcome back to Anchored and Devoted. I am Pastor Joseph and
Hey, I'm Pastor Jer.
we're uber excited. Not really. We we are talking today about gun control. I don't know if that's the best label for this topic, but we are talking about guns. How about that? And then who should have them and who shouldn't, or is it a biblical right, or like there's a whole bunch of stuff in this topic.
Yeah, hi. Circumscribe this thing largely. It's
yes. I mean, I've heard scriptures for everything, and I'll just put myself out there. I do own guns. So for those who do not, you can turn me off right now, but I was in Navy and was trained, and they are locked up in a box, which is in a safe, which is inside of another safe. But I'm not gonna pretend I don't own them. I do. And yet, but you got to talk about gun control, which is
Yeah, we do. Full disclosure, I do not own guns. I have a desire to own a gun, but
yeah,
I
you
also
just covered those
blind.
who do.
And I was talking to my wife about it the other day. Honestly, I was talking with her. I for various things, I would love to have. I enjoy shooting, enjoy going to the range, but for me to spend $500 or $1,000, I love the piece that SIG makes. I think SIG makes a very nice piece of hardware. But for me to spend that kind of money to go to the range 2-3 times a year, and otherwise in a self-defense scenario and home invasion scenario, I'm likely putting more people at risk than in protection because of my vision with the weapon. It's like, come on, let's be honest with myself here, Jer. This is go ahead and do something. I use a cane when I walk. I use a white cane.
You and I need to schedule some time in the range.
I would love to, dude.
Yeah, we got to do that soon.
But no, when I walk in places where I'm not familiar with the area, I will use my white cane, and I look like a blind person going along, even though I can see some. So for me, the real issue is if I can touch it with my cane, it's probably safe for me to use a gun on it, which limits me to like a machete or something. Like, let me touch you first to make sure I can ID this really well before I kind of go Conan over here. Anyway, yeah. So first question.
Okay.
Should we, as Christians, like, is there a basis for owning guns? As a people. Why do we? Yeah, okay, I get the whole Constitution thing, but I'm not even dealing with that. Like, as Christians,
right? Yeah, and so I think we want to separate. There's two topics that get lumped under gun control. One is gun violence, which I think should be the second topic. Right now, we're just talking about should Christians have them?
Should we even have them?
Right, and I mean, there's the scriptures. I'm working against you here, Jared. There's the scriptures of Jesus, saying turn the other cheek. And loving my neighbor, and often that is used as a reason to not have a gun. There are scriptures that encourage us to be willing to die for our neighbors, and again, that is one used as a reason to say shouldn't have a gun.
Right.
The
Old Testament tells us that there's a time coming where the spears and the swords are going to be taken and beaten into plowshares.
Correct.
In fact, I know of an organization that will literally take your weapons and recycle them and make them into tools for you. In fact, they call themselves raw something, and they did that specifically because it takes the word war and flips it around backwards.
Okay. Never heard of them, but sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's and I mean, I guess we'll have to drop this episode right after
Tools is the name of that organization.
The
Not
other
sponsored,
episode.
just putting it out there.
What are you trusting in? Are you trusting in the weapon for your protection, or is it a layer of protection? The the recognition that spiritual warfare is of much greater concern than physical warfare, at least based off of scripture, and that's what I believe. Um,
I mean, it's so clearly what Paul tells us. We do not wrestle against
right,
physical
correct,
adversaries.
correct. And yet there are adversaries who desire. Uh, again, I'm not sure where we're going to drop this episode in relationship to the stuff we've recorded. There are those who desire to harm others, um, based off of misinformation,
Hmm.
miseducation, um, ignorance, um, you know, as well as we'll talk about in an episode racism, where there is this desire based off of, and it might be a truth for them, but information that they hold truth as a truth, that leads to actions of on others.
Right.
One of my biggest issues for um, the ability for people to protect themselves, and this really is protection. I'm not talking about, again, um, the offensive side. This is the defensive side. Um, um, Before I do anything, am I willing trust God with a situation? Am I willing to wrestle with, okay, God, what are you trying to do in this situation?
Okay.
This isn't a um, what's mine is mine, and I must protect it. I believe God gave me everything, so I don't really need to protect it. I
Dave, would you say
um
that again? The thing glitched here.
oh, okay. I said I believe God owns everything, so I don't need to protect it. He's the one who gave it to me, so
Hmm.
He can give it to me again, just like when I look at Job. Um, but I do recognize that there are, when we look at the Old Testament specifically, we see um, God calling his people to war. We see God calling his people to defend the nation. We see God calling his people to go and correct others
Hmm.
in ways that we would often say are not, what is the word? I'll agree. No, um, civil. That's the
Okay.
word. Um, uh,
So, but I guess I don't. It sounds like we're kind of circling this question, but
mm,
so biblically,
mhm.
is self defense, is weapons for self defense something that you think scripture says this is
Yes,
permitted,
correct. Because I'm not
excluded?
seeking
It's
revenge. Again, this is self defense. Um, this is a boundary has been broken, and um, the the choice of whether it's a knife or a rock or a gun, to me doesn't change because this is a defensive um, posture to protect those within a premise.
but
Um,
we don't see the early church Christians doing that. We don't see them picking up rocks or swords when they were taken into the um, the stadiums. We don't see them forming, sort of Christian militias when they were in Rome being persecuted. We don't see Jesus. In fact, we see Jesus telling Peter, "Put the sword away," because
mhm,
he who
he
lives by the
did.
sword dies by the sword.
Correct, but then we see later on in Luke where, um, we see first when he sent out the disciples and he told them, don't take anything.
Right.
No protection. God's got this. Move on. The second wave, he sent them out. He told them to pretty much take money. Take your cloak. If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Luke 22. Uh, this was again the second sending out, and um, the the expectation is that peace will be here when Christ returns. Not yes, we are to be agents of peace. Yes, we are to be willing to sacrifice ourselves for others, and that's the tough part of, okay, when it comes to defending a house. am I willing to spend time before God to understand the situation from an eternal perspective, not just a temporal one or a social one?
It
Um,
sounds like you're suggesting a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of life that is impractical at least. That okay, I'm not going to put things into strict categories of this is mine, therefore I have a right to protect it. I have to keep this mindset of this is something God's given to me, and I need to ask Him how He wants me to respond in the situation.
correct. I'm a
But that
steward of
that
His
that
stuff.
kind of means if my home's being invaded, it sounds like what you're saying is okay. Well, it's time to stop and have a prayer meeting.
No, that's not the good question. I don't mean a prayer meeting as far as um, okay, so if a person is breaking into my house, um, and um, I am taking the posture of again protecting my wife and my child, honestly, them getting in the house isn't my first worry. It's my kids and my wife.
Right.
And so being clear with the individual as to what will happen and what will not. Um, I actually leave my keys and my wallet downstairs on the dining room table just in case someone wants to break in, they can have it and go. Like
If
I kid you
anyone's
not.
listening who might be a cat burglar, there is a Pathfinder,
I'm just saying, no,
oh
really,
07
honestly,
Pathfinder with your name on it.
this is how I live with the expectation I don't want to harm this other person. So I literally leave it on the dining room table so I can say it's there if someone breaks in.
Okay, so hypothetical. Let
Um,
me just change the situation real quick because
I
I think I
wasn't
know what your
done.
answer is going to be.
I
I
wasn't
know
done.
we're
Okay.
going to come back to it. All right. So you're out in the street and you've got a concealed carry permit and you've got a piece on you, and someone comes up to you to mug you.
Hmm.
What do
I'm
you
not
do?
gonna give him my gun. What?
Okay. Well, my question is, you've got your gun, you got your wallet. They want your wallet, but you can protect it with a gun. What do you do?
Are they? Do they have a knife? Do they have a gun? Are we having a conversation? Like what like there's a whole bunch here because for me, I'm happy to give, and I know it might sound wimpy. I'm happy to give someone well. I can turn off the credit cards tomorrow. I'd rather not harm them. But I'm not giving them my gun, like they're not gonna harm me either.
Well, they don't know you have your gun. They just know you have money.
I'm
And
happy
for
they
some
can have
reason,
it
they
all.
think for some reason they've chosen you as a soft target.
Exactly. They have no clue that there's nothing but mothballs and and lint in my wallet, but they're more than welcome to it. I'm happy to give them my wallet. They can go and buy some Cheetos on my credit card or some gas. But I mean, for me, that's not worth harming someone else.
All right. That's what
Um,
I thought you were going to say, but I wanted to
so
specify that.
again, I'm so pro life. It's not funny. Like I am genuinely pro life in allowing someone um, live and experience all the silliness of being human, with the hope that they will come to a saving knowledge of Christ. I don't believe I can get in the way of that in any way,
Hmm.
but I do believe I can help people to come to know Him. And so, if someone's breaking into my house and they're now seeking to harm someone,
Yeah.
that's different. Um, Often people are breaking in we won't that's another episode, we can get into that. But
Often
know
people are
that
breaking in because they want material goods, not because they want to do bodily harm.
correct,
Like
correct,
most people don't want to do bodily harm. They're just looking for a quick score, whatever it is
correct.
that they're
And
trying to do.
so, for me, again, like I said, I've already thought through it. I'd rather someone just take my keys to my amazingly super fast hot car that lives in the front yard and the
With the
huge
windows
wallet.
open.
Um, yeah, exactly. Again, I don't anywho, um, when it comes to, um, being a person of faith, for me, I enjoy hunting. I haven't done it in a while, but I do enjoy hunting. So I'm not a big person who believes in assault rifles as a God-given right at birth. Um, I do understand, in our founding documents, there is the expectation that if an army needed or a militia needed to be raised swiftly, it could come from the
Hmm.
people in the community along with weapons.
Hmm.
I know as Americans, we have so many, it's not funny. It's silly. And now we're even printing ghost guns, which is even more impressive, as if we didn't have enough. Um, but uh, and again, this was my training, the desire to protect life at all costs, mine and the other person's, is real. And I
Right.
know that's not the norm, right? The norm is you broke onto my land. I should be able to get you off my property because of XYZ. That I mean, you can correct me, but I don't see that in scripture.
No,
Um,
I see we're talking here, and I want to turn the corner here to talk about the next half of this. But as you're saying this right here, what I'm thinking about is we had the episode on the three rules of fighting,
we did, yes. Yes,
and
that's correct.
that's how I think both you and I think through this. It is not too. It is not too. It's a correct statement to state that both you and I are ready to take the life of another person under circumstances that we have already thought through, that we've already taken to the Lord and said, if you want this line to change, you're going to have to show me where it needs to change, because
Right.
there are predicates that if these predicates are passed, if there is harm that I know is going to be done, if I can't simply walk away, if it's going to be better for me to respond than if it's not going to be enough for me to simply take the beating, to give over the wallet,
Mhm.
then I'm ready to go into action. And if I do, that means I'm ready to take a life.
And that's again, that's not the desired goal. I like to take my gun to the range. I like to go hunting. That's what I like to do. It's not for taking lives, but I know that there are individuals that don't see that as a hard line or um, see the other person as bearing the image of God. They see them as the enemy.
I guess that's one of the things that we didn't actually talk about when we talked about the rules of fighting. The rules of fighting that I just went through there, they do protect me,
Hmm.
but they're in fact designed to protect you from me.
Hmm.
They're designed to put barriers in the way that unless they have been breached by you, I keep the gun in the holster, I keep the sword in the sheath, I keep the fists down. And that's what I really want to point out here is that while both you and I are we're stating unequivocally, yes, Scripture gives a very strong basis for protecting personal property, for protecting life and liberty. It does not ban, it does not exclude having weapons that can take a life from being a part of the proper life of the Christian. And we're ready to use those things to take a life, knowing first and foremost how deeply God cares for every person, including the person who wants to do me harm. I mean, this
Correct.
really has to go to the point where Jesus, while he's hanging on the cross, says, "Forgive them, Father, because they don't know what they're doing." That's how he said, if I wanted to, I could call down 10,000 legions of angels and they would deliver me. But I've already made the decision. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's best for me to go to the cross than to stop this injustice from happening. But that we have to get to the second question here, and that's you started to touch on it. Should we be able to, as Americans, what? And let me ask it this way, so it's not so
Hmm.
heated. What would be good roadblocks or hurdles for someone who wants to own a weapon to have to get over or through in order to secure and obtain a weapon? Because
I
that's what it really comes down to: gun reform, gun control reform, what kind of laws we put in place, whether it's red
Yep,
flag
and I
or
mean, this gets to the gun violence part.
let's
Um,
go there.
where you are now on an offense, and we've lowered the barrier to such a degree that anyone can get a gun. It's interesting how in our culture we like to do that, and you see waves of change take place um, based off of perception. Example: the housing market's super hot. The barrier to become a real estate agent is low. Everyone's becoming a real estate agent to to
They're
make
all excellent too. Number
right
one in the
to
state.
make easy money. Again, it's driven out of a comfort mindset or um, a pride-filled mindset of I can control it. So you instead of going to God and being ahead of the curve, you're always chasing the next wave. And when it comes to gun violence, the we've glorified it in our culture, but we've also made it easy to access
Hmm.
because it's taken as a right.
Hmm.
The the access is what you're talking about, Jared. And for me, um, I really think the smarter something begins, the higher the threshold should be to have access to it. And when I say the smarter, you can have a rock, when you're 4 or 5. Like that's
Right.
that's pretty simple. And as
You
you
must have a
mature,
son.
yes, and as you mature, you learn, you know what, don't throw them at windows, right? Like,
Hmm.
because there's not only are there windows, but there's people inside the house, so you
Yeah.
can hit them. Um,
There's cars outside the house, so when you hit the house, it bounces off and scratches up the car.
exactly, like this process, this uh, maturation process is one that people go through as they continue to mature. So for me, I think 21's a good number. Um,
Hmm.
if you've been in the military and you've been trained, I think that's different um, because hopefully you've had to wrestle with life and death, which isn't part of the training when it comes to gun training in most states. It's just how to um, shoot properly, how to understand mentally that uh, this is a weapon,
Hmm.
and know that the training is often a lot less than it is for a car, to drive a car.
Right.
So for me, it would have to be something greater than to drive a car.
So, are you in favor then of? I mean, obviously
I
there
mean,
are
if we
gun.
kept it at
There's a gun
16 or
license.
18 or correct, like I was saying, a gun license. So if we kept it at a lower age of 18 or whatever, which I'm not going to fight anyone over, like I don't see the purpose in that.
Hmm.
Um, this again, the training has to be on par with something else that takes lives like cars. Like it needs to be significant.
Now, I think that this gets into a different area. Two things. Number one, I completely agree. I think that there. I think it would be better to have a licensing, um, a way of licensing, not to say who is allowed,
Hmm.
because the Constitution says who is allowed
Right.
to own guns, but to say rather who has demonstrated that they have fulfilled their responsibility to take what they are allowed to do.
Correct.
Now, this is different than cars in that there is no constitutional right to a driver's license.
But yet we treat it as though there is. So
Yet we treat it as so there is. So that's one thing. There is a distinction here that, from a legal point of view, is outside of my wheelhouse to be able to speak to well, except to say there is difference, and in fact, the Constitution does put bigger protections on your and my ability to own a gun
and then I mean
than
there
a license.
if there
But
isn't um if there isn't um a clear connection between life and death and understanding all the realities of owning a gun. Just even the statistics, like that you're more likely to harm someone in your family or take your own life when you have a gun in the house. Just general facts of knowing this, so that you're fully aware and not surprised when you get drunk and then all of a sudden you're having these thoughts and you're thinking of your gun as the only option.
right.
Like those um I've been through I think Maryland State training twice, and Both times I would classify them, and I apologize to the state of Maryland. I love you. It was a joke. Um,
But see, that's the second point I was going to get to. When we talk about licensing a car, I've talked to some friends who received their driver's license in, say, a country like Germany, where there's legit tests of ability
mhm.
that go on before you can receive your license. And I've watched where the driver's courses in our state, in particular, over the past 20 or 30 years, have gone from requiring you to demonstrate that you know how to drive a car by actually driving it
And parallel park.
and
They took that
all
off the
sorts of
license.
things to,
So
and
can
don't
you
quote
just
me on
move
this,
the
but
car in a circle?
I think, we have gotten at least very close to a point where there is no road test any longer.
I
It's
I
just this sort of knowledge base of, did you fulfill this many hours because you're saying that you did, of driving someplace, and have you answered these questions, and the agency responsible for certifying that this person has demonstrated the proficiency and the responsibility to operate this vehicle to receive the license has been denigrated. It's suffered loss, and as a result, we have people receiving the licensure that should not. And I'm talking just about cars at this point.
no, 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 again, this is my view is similar when it comes to guns, is that there is clearly a mismatch when it comes to, the training and glorification. Like, if you're gonna glorify guns, then you better train people well so they understand, don't play with them, don't clean them while they're loaded, like, just common sense stuff.
Right.
Mm, when you go online and look at how many people shoot themselves in a year cleaning their guns, it's impressive. So obviously, there should be some training on how to clean your gun. Take out the bullets first,
That's
then
not
how to
just the magazine
disassemble
either.
it.
That's also the chamber.
Yeah, like it's humbling to me, and I'm super pro life. That we are like sheep. We need protection, and um, there is when I say we need protection from ourselves.
Hmm.
It's kind of like airbags in a car. There needs to be some stuff that is promoted. I have no issue with smart guns. So if you want an assault rifle, then it needs to be a smart one. And there are certain things that I think, like with cars, we can do with guns to make them so much safer. When it comes to violence, though, understand that just like with Cain and Abel, the fun thing that most people quote, man's going to choose something. Um,
Right.
my concern is that rocks don't come with 15 bullets or 18 bullets, and as
Right.
well as a scope. Y- There is a bigger impact when you have smarter weapons, and so you should have to have a much higher standard um, to use such things. You want
But
to,
this, at the same time, this is this is why gun reform is hard. When you and I started off in counseling,
hmm
there were fewer counselors than there are now,
oh, a
but
lot
there
fewer.
were significantly more than there were 20 years before us.
Correct.
And the licensing agencies set in place parameters to receive a license in counseling.
hmm
And because the field burgeoned the way it did, a license was worth one thing, but a license with graduate work was worth more. A license with a doctorate degree was worth more. And then there were different licenses that you could get. And the more the license proliferated, the more there were people who held that licensure, the poorer the overall quality of general care became. The easier it was to attain a license
I know.
was correlated to the number of licenses that were given,
hmm
which was correlated to a lack of competency
Correct.
of the
You lowered
license
the barrier.
holders.
You lowered the barrier to entry, so everyone did it, and in doing that, you ended up with a poorer pool of individuals. Um, and
But at
that
the
is what
same
I'm.
time, if you have a board that has the authority to license, then you're saying in a de facto way that you also possess the authority to bar and to set the standards.
Now, if you again, if you've taken a course and never shot a gun, I don't see how you should get a gun. If you've only fired it once and you did not hit the paper, I don't like these are just things where for me paralleling it to a car, you should
All right.
they can say no to a driver's license. I get it, and I get this is a freedom that we hold more dearly than we hold to our Bibles. But and use more often than we
There's a little nudge right there.
um it's guns shouldn't define you.
Okay, so quick fire questions, and we could both answer these, but I'll just spit out a few. Um, age limit to gun ownership, yes or no?
I do believe so, yes.
And you said 21, but you're not going to quibble over 16, 18.
I'm not, as long as there's much more training at 16 and 18, and I mean a lot
Okay.
more.
So that's the second question. Um, safety training courses, hands-on,
Yeah,
live fire,
yes.
demonstrating. But when you were in the military, you had to demonstrate not only the ability to put bullets down range accurately, but you had to be able to disassemble your gun,
Correct.
put it back together,
Correct.
demonstrate that you knew how to clean it, demonstrate that you knew the difference between it and other guns,
Correct.
and how to use those others.
To the point where you had to bring it back multiple times and prove that you were taking care of both your rifle and your sidearm. Like, you had to prove that you would maintain it, not just throw it in the corner.
So very high level tactical training, hands-on
Oh,
training.
I mean, to me, I don't think it's unreasonable to have some agency that really double checks that you actually keep your guns in a gun safe. There
Mhm.
isn't one. Like, they tell you when you buy it, you're supposed to keep it in a safe, but they don't sell you a safe. You can
Well, I
buy
guess
a
that's a
safe.
that's my third question then, just in terms of quickfire. Um, should you have to demonstrate a knowledge of both the federal and local laws
Yeah.
that okay, you should have to. You should have to demonstrate prior to gun ownership that you know the laws.
Yes, because then you're gonna drive around saying, "I didn't know."
Okay. Insurance. As a gun owner,
Mm,
should you be required to carry gun insurance?
I haven't thought about that one. Because we talked about it in relationship to cars. Um, yeah, I don't know how that would work because I know people are suing gun manufacturers.
So, not a quick question then. Okay, so
Um,
next
and I
question
don't
then.
know.
Should gun manufacturers be liable for how their tools are used?
This is me personally. This has nothing to do with scripture. This is just me personally. Um, I think in America, I mean, that's like suing Twinkies for making Twinkies. Like, I just don't know how you make them liable when
All right.
I have no clue how you're going to use it.
Sorry, I
So,
said I would answer
like,
too.
you
I
could,
agree. I agree with that answer. I'm not in
yeah, like,
favor of
I
holding
don't, I
manufacturers
don't
liable.
think they should be liable. I think the individuals who use them should be, and I do think now that I'm chewing on it, insurance when a person buys a gun would make sense that you
Yeah.
could choose some form of insurance so that if you did go and harm other people's, they could get some um, financial compensation. Because I mean, if
Yeah, I
I
don't even
went,
know what that is, but
yeah, I don't
you're
either.
taking a risk. You're assuming a
Correct,
risk. The risk
correct.
may come with financial responsibilities,
Yeah, I don't
either
sue
to you
forward.
or to others.
Yeah, I don't sue forward. I don't sue Jim unless it was brakes or something like that. But I mean, if someone decides to plow into a bunch of people on Main Street Laurel, like I don't think
Right.
I need to sue the car company. I'm sure some lawyer will encourage me to, but that's not my first thought. My first thought is toward the individual who is using the car inappropriately. Uh,
Okay.
my first, this is just thinking off the cuff, would be that the person who is liable is the one who had the weapon and used it in a way that brought harm to others. The
Either in
unfortunate part
accordance with the
is
law or not.
well, the unfortunate part is that the barrier's so low to entries. Even though $500 might sound like a lot or $1,000 might sound that's not that much when you consider ways to harm people quickly,
Right.
especially when bullets are cheap. Unless you start selling bullets for 200-300 bucks, then then you're like, oh, you know what? I can see no one's going to be shooting anyone else because the bullets are so expensive.
Okay, so next fast question here. Gun ownership tax. Yes or no?
I've
As a
never
gun
thought.
owner, I'm going to tax you for the guns that you own.
I know you're thinking about cars again. I don't know. I've never. I mean, there's.
I'm just thinking about policy because that's only where we are
Well,
here. We're
there's. I
talking
mean,
about
there's
policy.
already a tax you pay because it's a big lump of metal. Like you pay that or plastic. I don't know what kind of gun it is, but um, you pay that to the state as well as on the federal level when you purchase it. So I don't know what an annual tax would do. It's not like a car where I'm using a road over and over again.
Well, I mean, the basic economics, whatever you tax, you
Oh,
make less of.
oh no, I get it like cigarette, but you could tax the bullets. You could tax a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Um, I could
So
see
give or take
taxing.
there.
I could see taxing bullets. How about
Okay.
that?
All right.
That
I'm
I
not
could.
sure. I don't think I'm in favor of a tax for either guns
Yeah,
or bullets, but I am in favor. Just to go back to the last one, the insurance. I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of the test for law demonstration of understanding.
yeah.
I'm in favor of testing for competency of use after having completed appropriate training. So next one would be mental health
Yes, I definitely
requirements.
believe that it's the tough part is that much of mental health is subjective when it comes to is a
Don't let that
person.
secret out.
Well, I'm just saying, like, dude, um, uh, goes to buy the gun, he's sane, and then 2 minutes later, he's insane. What? Like, how? Like, how? How? Right? Like, he
Right.
literally just bought the gun that morning, drove to the school that afternoon, and somewhere in between, he became insane. And the guy who sold him the gun didn't realize it
Okay.
because he only saw him for 2 minutes or whatever on his 18th birthday, and it was legal. And so we keep
So
like
you're saying it's difficult, but you're in favor.
I'm saying that there has to be something more than the subjective, because if
Okay.
I like you and you like me, then we can both say we're same. It has to be something more concrete. I don't know
Okay.
what it is,
Gotcha.
whether it's um, you know, a cognitive test to
Hmm.
understand your thinking,
Hmm.
whether it's um, a test trying to see um, and
If you
help
have a
you
bias
connect with.
against black people.
No, I was about to say about valuing life,
Okay.
in general, um, and so, yeah, race could be a part of that, and I hadn't thought about that, but I'm just saying, I do think most people do not connect with the consequences of owning a gun until they're actually dealing with the consequences of it.
I'm completely in favor with this as well. However, and this is a caveat, not all tests are created equally.
Oh, no, I agree.
And
That's my issue
um,
with the
that's
the psych test. It's like,
that's so okay. So then, waiting period before purchasing, period before picking up. Yes or no?
I'd say yes.
All right,
I'd say
me too.
yes, and that's just because I know there's been a it's been borne out that if you wanna kill your spouse or you're angry
Yeah,
with somebody, typically 72 hours is a good cooling off period.
right.
And so I'm in favor of that. Like, it just stops people from harming those that they're angry with in the moment.
Ability to sell guns in unregistered ways, such as through flea markets or gun shows.
I hadn't thought about this one. I you know, my tough part is because this is a life thing. If we're taxing bullets heavily, then go for it. If everything's still willy-nilly like it is now, then I'm not so much a fan.
Okay.
And it's just because, again, the mental health, the lack of thoughtfulness of loved ones caring for another by buying them guns and giving them to inappropriate times.
Okay.
Um, and you're having a bad day, give you a gun. What? No, that's that's again, they're for defense. It's not they they are meant to destroy.
So red flag laws then. Should the government be able to come in and, based on an allegation or a demonstration of
You see, I have no.
mental issue, mental illness, should they be able to come in and remove the
Let me back up
guns?
to the swap meet. I have no issue with the swap meet if, again, they are registering them. They,
Okay.
as long as there's a registration that takes place somewhere, I don't care, how you do it. If you do it on your smartphone or whatever, that's not the issue. As
Is it
long as
good news? Just take a picture and put it up to Snapchat.
no. Again, we need the VIN, like on a car. We need to know, the what is that? The Carfax or whatever. I need to see that it says.
Your driver's license number, your SSN needs to be attached to that
I'm
somehow.
just exactly like there's something. As long as no one's taking it from me, like there's something to say that I gave this to my son or I gave this to my neighbor or whatever. Like I gave it away. And I even think that that's a good thing when it comes to mental health. Like if you are beefing with your spouse, I don't have a problem with me, calling you and saying, "Hey, I'm giving this to you for the next 90 days for my own personal well-being."
Mhm.
Um, and being able to transfer it to you and know that you have it without having to worry about, as you stated, the state or someone else coming in to take it. I, um,
I just thought of a great business idea.
I do have, oh mercy, I do have an issue again because of the way we currently have the system, where I do think there is a need for the state to get involved when it comes to individuals with mental health.
Mhm.
I think if we dealt with it on the front end, then that could go away. But because we don't, it's cleaning up on the back end.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where, yes, I respect your right as a person to be able to get the gun, but understand if you're rocking a second grade education and not able to cognitively understand the ramifications of pulling the trigger, I don't care if you are 18, it doesn't work. Like it just doesn't. Um,
So, what should the penalty be if you own a gun and you use it improperly? Should you be facing prison time? Should you lose your ability to own a gun thenceforth if you own a gun and it is stolen?
Correct,
Should
yeah,
you
I saw
lose
the air
your
quotes there.
well? I mean,
Well,
so the problem is,
this is
I,
why I think they should be smarter. Like, there is the ability to make guns smarter, like, there is. It's just one of those things where we
you got to
like
use
it
it. You got to
dumb.
breathalyze before you can use your gun.
No, you don't have to breathalyze, but you can have it master your hand, and that's not even new technology. You can make it so that the owner is the only one firing the gun, not anyone and everyone, so you can't lose the gun. You can
So
make it.
similar to some kind of negligence law, if you haven't taken the steps to secure your firearm and you lose control of it, therefore you've been negligent and you should be responsible for that.
I don't again, if for me, the easiest thing is my car.
Hmm.
If I've left my keys in my car and call the police, they're gonna say, your car wasn't stolen." And I'll say, "Yes, it was. I left it here with the keys in, doors unlocked." "Well, it wasn't stolen." "What do you mean it wasn't stolen?
That
It
was
was."
picked up and permanently borrowed by your choice.
"Yeah, like, you gave it away." "But I didn't. I didn't give him permission." "Okay, you you did when you left your keys in. The whole idea is that take the keys, you take that permission away." The same is true with a gun. If it's a dumb instrument, what like they currently are, then it makes it easy for anyone to have access to it, and that makes it so that, again, I have to keep mine in 2 safes. Um,
Final fast question, which obviously haven't been fast. Should there be a cap on the number of firearms an individual can own?
no. If you wanna buy a bazillion, go for it. You can't shoot it's like cars, you can't drive them all at
I
one
hate
time,
talking
so
to a libertarian. I want to get you into a nice, you know,
I am an
aren't you a
independent.
Democrat or Republican?
I am an independent, and if you wanna buy a bazillion guns, go for it. Again, I'm taxing the bullets, so God bless you. Um, you wanna buy all the bullets, go for it, but at least there is some thing like a cigarette tax where and discouraging you from being silly. You're always willing to you can make them at home yourself, like, I'm not stopping you from making them. It's just one of those things where we want to make sure the guns are smarter, and so are the people.
Okay. I'm not going to ask any more ridiculous questions here. And I know I'm leaving out legitimate things like extended clips, and
Well,
I'm also
the
excluding
the
dumb things like bump
the
stocks.
the big thing is that when it comes to violence, and that's what I was trying to aim at, is God is nowhere for violence. He's
Mhm.
nowhere for just destruction. And so, even when it comes to war, we talked about just war. There is a space, and we see it in Scripture where God moves, and He's moving out of His holiness, and He's calling people to a better way. And yet, when they choose not to because of the hardness of their heart, the brokenness of their minds, he humbles them so they can come to know him for who he truly is,
Right.
God.
I
Um,
was talking with a friend about this the other day.
You have another friend besides me? What?
Full disclosure, it was my wife.
Oh,
So
okay.
no.
Well, she's okay.
We were talking about the verse that God has created everyone for a purpose, even the wicked for the day of judgment,
Hmm.
day of destruction. And I said, yeah, it really is very much like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. But Gollum's the one who fell captive to the power of the ring, yet he himself, having fallen prey to it, did desire and did seek out to satiate the desire to have the ring. And in the end, it was that wicked desire that he fulfilled, only to be holding the ring as he fell into the mountain and destroyed both himself and the ring. And that's where you see God's purpose. Did God want for Gollum to have to go through this? No. But Gollum chose this, and God said, well, then this is what we're going to use. And if Gollum hadn't pursued that, how would the story have ended? Because the story would have gone something like this. And then Frodo gets there, decides he can't get rid of it, throws on his puts the ring on, becomes invisible, and walks away to go do whatever. And Sam had no chance of finding him and throwing him into the lake. And Sam couldn't have even if he had to. Even if he could have, Samwise couldn't have done that to Frodo. The only way the story could have ended was with a power outside of both Sam and Frodo, who was so bent on gaining the ring that they did so in such a way that the ultimate purpose of the destruction of the ring was carried out. Now okay, sorry for the excursions into geekdom there. But
Okay.
that is to say this, you said God is not in favor of destruction. He's not in favor of violence. And I agree, he's not. Yet he has permitted us to pursue our desires. And he has said there are parameters. And if you do things that are unjust and unholy, there are consequences. And ultimately, the consequences is I, God, am going to punish all sin. And if you throw yourself this way, you will experience violence from my hand. But it's not because I want to do this, it's because I've told you this is the way you are to go. And I've given you the choice to either go that way or to choose a different way. It's not an easy, there's not an easy solution. And we haven't gotten into the, if the government can license and the government can also take back, and do we trust the government with this? There's a bunch of different questions that I think rightly come into this conversation. But from a Christian point of view, it sounds like what we were saying is this, like anything else, is something that has to first be founded in the fact that God has created us in his image with
Mhm.
an incredible worth. He's called us to love each other and to serve each other. He has called us also to protect what he has given to us. But ultimately, he's going to be the one who's going to mete out judgment and justice. And
Right.
he's going to hold us responsible for every decision that we make, which means every decision that we do make must be made intentionally with godly character. And that includes owning a firearm and using a firearm.
Correct.
It's not something we can simply say, well, it's in the Second Amendment, so I'm good to go.
I agree. I agree.
Well, can we call this discussion then ended and solved?
Yes. I don't know about solve, but we can definitely end it. I think we've gone long enough. I don't know who else is still listening, but I think we killed this one pretty good. So.
Well, I'm grateful that you guys, for those of you who did stick it out, stuck this out with us. If you think that we're off of our rockers, please feel free to let us know. We like feedback of any kind. If you want to reach us, you can at anchoredanddevoted@gmail.com. I'm Pastor Jer. He's Pastor Joseph. We love you. We're praying for you. We're looking forward to seeing you next time. Until then.